Two, one. Welcome back to the YouTube channel. My name is Lucas, aka 3 Point Spanish King, and as always, our English representative all the way from England, James Butler. And James, every time we'll say we'll see you next time, it's not to be. You're in here very quickly. We can't seem to get rid of you, James. If we tried.
There's never a shortage of things to talk about, is there, in terms of English cricket at the moment?
It's all going on, and a bombshell was dropped. Joe Root has stepped down as captain, which came to a shock to me. Probably everyone's considering. He said just a couple of weeks ago that he will continue on as captain. So, James, first thoughts about him stepping down?
I'm partly quite sad about it. I've known Rooty since he was a teenager. He's a terrific lad. He's a cricket badger through and through. He loves the sport, and I can understand why he wanted to continue. It may be that somebody's been in his ear and he's had a chat with a few people and thought, do I actually need this anymore? Do I, can I actually give anything more than I've given? I don't think he can. I think he's been 100% as England captain. It hasn't worked out. He's not been dealt the best hand. He's captain through COVID. He's not got a vintage England side to skipper either. And I don't think, I think he'd probably be the first to admit that he's probably not the best captain that's ever lived either. So a combination of things there, but I don't think you can fault Joe Root at all for the commitment he's given that role. And I think it'll be a big moment for him, to have finally sat down and thought, my time has come. I need to hand this on to somebody else. Is a big thing for any captain in Test cricket, especially when you've captained as long as Joe has. So, but I would think, and I'd imagine that once he's made that decision, you hear a lot of people say this in sport, that once they've actually made the decision to retire or to relinquish a leadership role or something like that, all of a sudden you feel a lot lighter as a human being. And I think he's probably maybe not there today, but in a couple of weeks' time, he might actually think that his appetite for the game and hunger for runs might be a bit fresher than it might have been if he'd still been saddled with England captaincy. And I think one final point, Lucas. I watched every ball pretty much of the West Indies trip, and having watched Joe quite closely all the way through his career, I think there were signs in the Caribbean that it was starting to take its toll. He looked tired. He didn't look fresh. He didn't look eager. He didn't look keen. And I think when it comes to that, that was the first time that I actually said, I think it's time for him to go. I think every captain has a shelf life. He's probably come to the end of his, but I don't think anybody can criticize the effort that he's put into that role. And hats off to him. And hopefully, what is probably a sad day for him today turns out to be the start of a chapter where he goes on and breaks Test match run scoring records, because he's obviously, despite the fact England haven't been winning, he's been the star performer for that side.
Well, indeed, his form with the bat has been outstanding as captain. So hasn't affected him one little bit as far as batting goes. But with the interview after the West Indies, I think it was David Gower that interviewed Joe Root. Joe Root was very passionate about coaching, about captaining England in the summer. He said, "I really want to do that." He didn't say, "Oh, I'll have to think about it." He said, "I want to be the captain of England," and now he's done a 360. Is this, he's thought about this, or was he pushed?
He's done a 180 because the 360 takes you back to where you started. That's just me being pedantic. I don't know. I mean, I think there's probably you can look at it from a number of different ways, and none of us know because we're not inside Joe Root's head. But he's either had a chance to actually sit down, speak to his wife. He's got a lovely wife, lovely kids, lovely family. So he's got no shortage of people that are going to be trying to have his corner and have his back. And it may be that somebody's just sat down with him and said, maybe now is the time. There's been no shortage of former England captains coming out in the newspapers to say it's time for him to go. Maybe he's taken that on the chin. Maybe whoever is going to be the director of cricket, it hasn't been appointed yet. England have got nobody in leadership roles at all at the moment. But if there is a potential, if they've made the decision and just not announced it yet. Maybe that person has been in his ear and said, "This is where I see this going. Go out on your own terms. Don't go out because we've sacked you." So yeah, there's a number of different ways, but I think genuinely, he was keen to continue when it was in the Caribbean. But when you're in that bubble and when you are part of that drive to try and make England better, it's possibly quite difficult to step back and actually evaluate things properly. And but he's probably had a few weeks now where he's been able to do that.
How would Joe Root go down as the captain? You know, uh, horrible record as captain, we all know, but with what he's had to deal with, lackluster batting, top order, lower order. How would he go down as just an individual as a captain? Is it all? I'll be more specific. Is it all his fault, or is as you said, he hasn't had much to work with? Yeah.
I don't think he's a great captain. I think he's
Yep.
probably a 6 out of 10 or something like that
Yep.
as a captain. He's not a bad captain.
Yeah.
But I think a number of things you said there play a massive part. He's not had a vintage top order.
Yep.
Said a few times on this show, if you've got a great side, you can look a great captain. If you've got a poor side, you can look a poor captain, even if you're a good one.
Yeah.
So I think you are ultimately judged by your results. He's got a 43% win record for England in Test cricket, which has been spoilt quite a lot over the last year.
Yeah.
I think with hindsight, he might have thought going after the Ashes might have been the best time to go. But I don't think he's going to be remembered as a great captain. I don't think he's going to be remembered as a bad captain. He's somewhere in the middle because people, if you're honest, and history doesn't always have the caveats in brackets or asterisks saying captain through COVID, captain with a bad side. It just has the bold, hard stats, doesn't it? But those are all mitigating circumstances against. As I say, he's never shirked any of that, and he's always given it 100%. So he can take a lot of credit for that, I think.
Has he gone too early, in your opinion? Wouldn't it be better if him to relinquish captaincy after the Ashes? Or is this appropriate time?
When he goes, and I just the reason he stayed probably longer than he should have done is because there isn't an obvious standout replacement. We'll come on to talk about that, I'm sure. But ultimately his responsibility is to himself and what he thinks he can give the role, and it's not his problem that there isn't a standout candidate to replace him. And if he thinks it's time to go, it's time to go. So, everybody watching on will have different opinions about when he should have gone. I think it's come to an end, and I think he's got to look after himself and make himself, ready to contribute to England going forwards. And if that means that he stands down now and supports somebody else, because I'm sure he will, knowing Joe Root, he'll be very much, as soon as the replacement's announced, he'll be right behind them. And he's going to be a huge player for whoever takes it on. He's going to be their key player. So, they need to have him at slip or have him at mid-on or mid-off. And I'm sure he'll play a part in the leadership group going forwards. But as I say, he's got to make the decision on his terms, not because there isn't somebody obvious to replace him, and there isn't.
Well, is there a possibility that Joe Root becomes the vice captain?
I think now is a time for him to just remove himself completely from that. Whether that comes back in the future, who knows? Because he's still got a number of years left in him as a Test player. And you don't have to be a designated leader to be part of the leadership group, do you?
No.
In any team dynamic, whether it's an office or a sports team, you can be you can lead without the tag of being a leader. I think whoever comes in now as captain will probably want to do it his way. Well, should want to do it his way. And if Joe Root is just part of the ranks but pipes up if required, and if the captain comes in and thinks, "Oh, we're kind of meandering here, Joe, what would you do now?" I don't think there's anything wrong with that. But I think Joe will be. If I think the right way for Joe to play this now is to just to return to the ranks, concentrate on his batting, and if the new captain needs anything from him, they ask him, and then he gives his words of wisdom, but steps back and lets them come in and take it on.
Well, since you said you know Joe Root, you can probably better answer this question better than anybody. Would he be an egotistic person? Let's say he did get put down, and he said, that's enough. We're going to step you down, find somewhere else. Would he have the ego in him to take over of the new captain? Well, no,
No,
he's a laid back guy.
no, he's
Yeah,
he's a cheeky chappy. He's a laid back kind
yeah,
of guy. He's certainly not. I mean, I've obviously not been captained by him, not been in that England dressing room. I would
yeah,
imagine he's not being a table thumping,
mm,
hairdryer shouting at people kind of captain. He's quite a respectful, polite kind of fella. He'll understand that the new captain coming in has got a lot on his plate. As I say, he'll be there to help him if he's required to, and he'll stand back when he's required to. I
mm,
don't think he'll be, um, trying to jump in front of the cameras in the limelight at all.
yeah. So we won't expect him to do the Steve Smith role. We know Pat Cummins is captain, but really Steve Smith.
Yeah.
He won't be doing that, will he?
I know. There may be, as I say, there may be
Yeah,
in sort of 4 years' time or 3 years' time, two
yeah,
years' time, whatever.
yeah.
There may be a position for Joe Root in that leadership group again, or as vice captain. But I think for now he'll be more than happy just to concentrate on scoring runs.
Uh, Going back to Joe Root, the captain. What a couple of series where you've said, "Geez, that's great." Captaincy. What are the series that you thought he got out of that very well? What series do you remember that Joe Root would be known for under his captaincy?
I don't think there's any standout. I mean,
Okay.
he's had some good performances as a captain. I think there's been very few. I mean, most of them came fairly early on. I think there's been very few times though where with that England top order he's been able to drive a game. As a captain, you want to try and get 400 on the board, then set your own
Mm,
fields and try and dictate the pace from there. And very few times has Joe Root been in that position. The collapses have become more famous than the big stands, and
mm,
so therefore he's been chasing games and trying to get back into matches on days 2, 3, and 4, rather than actually having 500 on the board and being able to kind of grind the opposition down. So it's been tough, I think, for him.
yeah.
As I say, if you're a good captain in a great side, you can look fantastic. And um, England very rarely have put Joe Root in a position where he can really take too many opportunities as a captain. I don't think so. I think his record's very. I mean, to captain as many times as he has done and he's got more wins and more defeats than any other England captain. Um, it's a good record. It's not a bad record. So I think over the last year, England have had not very much success at all, and I think that's tainted the memory of Joe Root in a way because he's gone out not on a high. He's gone out on
I
quite a
was going to
low.
bring that up. Yeah.
So that's a shame because he deserves better than that. But
Well,
if you actually go through some of the rest of his years as captain, there's been some
yeah.
very good performances. So um, as I say, I think it's time to go. It's the first time I've defended him. I've kind of backed him. I've wanted to see him carry on because, A, there isn't anybody else, but B, I know how much effort he'll be putting into that role. But, during that West Indies trip, that was and probably in the Ashes to some degree, that's the first time I've actually started to think this is probably time for you to go, Joe.
Does Joe Root get too much empathy? Now we know that he's the captain of that team, and basically it's a one man, show because players around him don't stand up. But as you said, it has tainted his career. But is that down to because people feel so sorry for him, and they realize that what he was up against it from day one. He's never really had the support, but at the end of the day, he could have stepped down at any time.
I think, Lucas, everything's binary.
Yeah.
You'll have people in my camp that kind of recognise the good parts of Joe Root and
Mm,
think that he's given it everything he's got.
yeah.
There'll be people who, I know people who just say, well, he's a rubbish captain. He should have gone ages ago.
Mm,
Um, there's not too many grey areas in the conversation these days, are there, on anything?
no.
But yeah, I
Well,
think when the dust settles and people actually look back on Joe's contribution as captain, I hope they see that there are as many positives as potential
yeah.
negatives, and I don't
Yeah.
think a lot of the negatives were in his power. Yeah, there were times where he let sessions drift. There were times where he didn't take, his field placings and his bowling changes, and maybe the way he looked after some of the bowlers could be questioned. But There's also a lot of baggage at the moment in and around that
Mm.
England side. The priority of white ball cricket, the fact that he didn't always get the squads he wanted, the fact that he's been up against it, and that the batters, generally speaking, have let him down. Which, yeah, like I say, when you actually write it down on Wikipedia or something, that's probably not going to be there in a bracket after it, is
Mm.
it? It's just going
Yeah.
to be the cold hard facts. But
Mm.
I think there was definitely positives from Joe Root's captaincy as well as the negatives that
Yeah.
people will talk about.
Well, with all the beatings he's taken, by press, media, fans, such and such, you can never question his heart. He's always been there for England cricket, the fans, and I think that's something that you don't hear a lot about Joe Root is his heart. Um, what what do you think of him as a person? Towards the ECB and the England fans.
I think that's his strength.
Yeah,
Yeah, tactically maybe not 6 out of 10, but I think as a human being, as a cricket badger, as I say, as
yeah,
a cricket lover,
yeah,
as somebody that's been immersed in the game since he was a kid, somebody that when he gets up in the morning, whatever age he is, the first thing he wants to do is put a bat in his hand and go and play
mm,
cricket.
yeah,
Um, he loves the game, and that comes across, I think, to people. The smile
mm,
there at the crease, the fact that he looks like he's enjoying it, the fact that he is obviously giving it his all. Whether it's good enough or not in people's minds that's open to debate. But I don't think the Barmy Army, I don't think England fans, I don't think anybody has been shortchanged by Joe Root as the human being.
indeed, well said. Well, as we've just been covering, Joe Root has stepped down. We're going to go into potential replacements. We've done a whole bunch of times of who's going to take over, who would you like to see. So I'll give you some names here, and you just tell me what you. Geez, how long have we got, James? I got a whole list of names.
It's about everybody in
um,
England's on this list, I think.
yeah, well, indeed. We won't name every single body. We'll just go through the players in the team, then domestic captains and outside the box. So we'll start with Ben Stokes. He's the vice captain at the moment, I think. Um, what 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 don't you like about him as a captain? What do you like about him as a captain?
There's about 54 million adults in England, I think, and half of those are going to be males. So there's 27 million potential candidates on the list. Some will be too old,
Yeah,
but
yeah,
I think
yeah.
Ben
Are you are
Stokes.
you are you putting your hand up, James? Is that you putting
No,
your
I'm too
hand up?
old. I'm too old. My knees are gone. Um, I I think Ben Stokes is the easy choice.
Mm,
This isn't, none of what I'm about to say is a reflection on Ben Stokes as a cricketer. I think he's a
no, yeah,
tremendous cricketer. I think he's, you know, his kind of reserves and his fight and some of the performances he's done over the last few years have been legendary. So, as an all rounder in the side, he's massively important, hugely important, and particularly that Test team adds that balance to that Test side. Um, but I also think there's about 15 million reasons he shouldn't be captain.
mm,
Um, he's not got a huge amount of captaincy experience. I think he's
yeah,
captained once in Test match cricket and they lost it. He's a hothead. Um, he's passionate, but that bubbles over on occasions. That's not necessarily a trait you want your captain to have. He's somebody who has, in the last 12 months, been well documented, has suffered from mental health issues.
yeah,
Um, and that is something that A, is great that he's spoken about that, but B,
yeah,
do you want to give somebody that's kind of battling that
yeah,
the most pressurized job in English cricket? I would say not. And another reason is that he has got quite a big injury history in recent times. He's currently got a bad knee, I think, at the moment. Um, he missed a lot of cricket in the last 12 months through mental health injuries. His finger, he would run through a brick wall for that side, and that's not a bad
mm,
thing to say.
yeah,
But
yeah,
a lot of people criticise Joe Root for bowling Ben Stokes too much, but I would probably think that Joe Root was having to wrestle the ball out of his
yeah,
sort of dead, lifeless hands almost over
mm,
my dead body kind of thing. Take this ball off me.
yeah,
I'm bowling England to victory. As a
yeah,
captain, I think there's a huge temptation for Ben Stokes to try and do everything himself. And that is something that, if they did go down that route, they'd need to make sure there was a vice captain, the same way Steve Smith takes things over from Pat Cummins.
Yeah.
When Pat Cummins has got the ball in hand, somebody would have to take that role for
Yeah.
England, because otherwise Ben Stokes would just bowl all day, and he'd be on the field for one day and then injured for the rest of the
Yeah.
season.
I'm glad you brought up that point, because what I've noticed since Pat Cummins has been captain, he bowls a lot. He bowls a lot of overs. In Pakistan, he bowled a ridiculous amount of overs. I think in the first test, he bowled over 30 overs. So I do get the point that, a bowling captain sometimes will get a bit egotistic, and they'll think, and you've just pointed out that, Ben Stokes is a bit like that. When Joe Root was captain, it was hard to get the ball off his hand. So is it a bit of a concern where he say, I'm the captain, I'm just going to bowl all day? Well, not all day, but you know what I mean. Is that a concern? Yeah.
Yeah, you're in a tight corner in the field. The partnership's growing. You've already bowled 20 overs, in the morning session or something, and you're thinking, well, Jimmy can't do this, Stuart can't do this. Give the ball to me. I'm going to give it 2 or 3 overs, and then 8 overs later, you still haven't got the breakthrough, but you're still trying. That's the danger, isn't it? And I think Ben Stokes is too important to that side to give the captaincy to, and that might sound strange, but. And I think he's too important to that side that they need to keep him fit. I mean, realistically, there's only 2 players in that England Test team at the moment who you could bet your bottom dollar they're going to be part of that England Test side in 12 months' time. And that's Joe Root and Ben Stokes. Joe Root's the outgoing captain. You can't give it back to him, obviously. And Ben Stokes is too important to keep him on the park. So for me, it would be an awful appointment if they go to Ben Stokes. But I think it's the obvious one. It's the easiest one, but it would be the worst one.
So a rating out of 10, how would you like to see Ben Stokes in the team out of 10 as captain?
2 out of 10.
Okay, so we'll put it 2. Okay, the next one has found some form when returning to England, but has been outside. That's Johnny Bairstow.
Johnny's not the one for me. I know Johnny as well from time at Yorkshire. He's a terrific lad. Great cricketer. He needs to get himself back into top form and to nail down that Test place first and foremost. He's shown a lot of signs that he's doing that, and when he's on fire, he's very much worth his place in that England side. Excuse me, but he's not a cricket badger. Whether you need to be a cricket badger to be the England captain, but you've got to obviously think about captaincy a lot. Or think about cricket a lot, you'd assume. And he's somebody that I know turns off from the game as soon as he drives out the car park. He's thinking about rugby, thinking about music, thinking about other stuff, not necessarily about cricket. And I also think he's probably a bit too sort of feisty, a bit too tetchy. He likes to prove people wrong. A lot of what people admire about Johnny is also potentially his downfall, because he does like to prove people wrong, but he is also a little bit prickly. And as an England captain, you're going to get as much criticism as anybody. And he doesn't always react to criticism very well. So for me, I'd put him above Ben Stokes in my wish list, but it'd only be on a 3 out of 10 rather than a 2 out of 10.
Well, that says something about Ben Stokes. If you're going to put Johnny Bairstow higher than Ben Stokes, so
I mean, I've given Ben Stokes 2 out of 10 because he's a terrific lad. He's got a great cricket brain, but that's it.
Yeah. Now I'm really struggling from the major team. Stuart Broad.
Stuart Broad, I could see the advantages. It would only be a stopgap because we don't know how long Broady's got left in that England Test team. Indeed, we don't know if he's ever going to play again because he was left out in the West Indies. But he's had a captaincy role before with England in the T20 field or format.
I can't stop laughing at that, James. Every time someone mentions T20, that I try not to take that serious.
But there would be worse appointments.
Okay.
But he wouldn't be my appointment. I also think, Lucas, we're going through people that are currently in the squad sort of situation, although Brody missed West Indies.
Yeah.
There's an argument to say just kind of jump away from that bubble and get a fresh pair of eyes, because
I'll bring that up as well, James. I'll bring that up as well.
Excuse me, I'm getting over COVID. I've got a dry throat.
Oh, gee.
So yeah, it, he wouldn't be my pick, Stuart
Okay.
Broad. I'd give him 4 out of 10 because he's probably better than the two we've mentioned already, but he wouldn't be my pick.
Okay. Another fast bowler. Or fast. You know where I'm going to go with this. James Anderson.
Same, exactly the same.
Yep.
Probably less captaincy experience than Stuart Broad. Not in the team at the minute.
Yep.
Has got huge experience. 3 out of 10.
Yep. A 3 out of 10. Okay. Now we're going to go with a domestic captain here. So we're going to go away from the current team and go domestic only. Ollie Pope, who's scored a tremendous amount of runs in the first 2 rounds for Surrey.
I'll jump in there. Ollie
Yep.
Pope. No.
Okay.
0 out of 10.
0 out of 10. No need to
I
go on
mean,
about that.
giving Ollie Pope the England captaincy now would be it'd be an insult to cricket. You know, terrific
Sorry, Ollie
lad.
Pope, if you're listening.
Terrific lad. Huge potential.
Yep.
Scores runs for fun at the Oval. Struggles
Yep.
elsewhere. Has struggled in Test cricket. Needs
Yep.
to nail his game down. Needs to bat along. Needs to show everybody that he's a Test player. You know,
Yep.
throwing him the captaincy would be bonkers.
All right. Well, let's see if we can do better than 0. James Vince.
James Vince now, he's possibly the one I'd go for at the
Okay.
moment. I think James Vince is better than a lot of his naysayers give him credit for. Yes, he went through a period with England where he scored pretty 20s and then edged to slip, but I think he's better than that now. He's got 100 in one-day cricket, which will have given him a bit of a boost. When he's on song, he's as good as anybody in England batting-wise. Technically beautiful. And he captains Hampshire and is well thought of down there. So, and I also think if you bring James Vince back into the side purely as a batsman, you know, the way it works with England is that somebody comes back into the side, they get a bad couple of Test matches, all of a sudden they're rubbish, clear off again. People have very short patience spans. Excuse me. But giving him the captaincy, people say, well, that adds too much pressure because you've got to prove yourself in two disciplines. But I actually think it probably takes the pressure off a little bit because if you say you're captain now for the next 2 years, we're appointing you for at least 2 years, you know you're in the side. So it takes the pressure off your batting, if anything. You can just concentrate on leading that group and scoring a few runs. Obviously, you've got your pride. You'll want to score runs, and not scoring any would start to cause you a problem. But it might just take the pressure off a little bit. I think James Vince is older. He's more mature. I don't think he'd be the worst shout in the world. It kind of illustrates where we're at, really. That he's my chosen pick, and I'm only going to give him 6 out of 10. Whereas, it's the first time, Lucas, in my memory that the England Test captaincy's come up, and there isn't an obvious couple of candidates or one candidate that's, that they almost don't need to announce it. It's so obvious that person's going to get it, or there's two people fighting it out for it. At the moment, there's nobody fighting it out for this.
I did say domestic captains, but they've been in and out of England. Royal Boy says, hello, James and Lucas. Hello, Royal Boy. Dan Lawrence from Essex, who is these are captains, by the way.
On what basis?
I'm only giving you names that have captained the domestic teams. He has been in and out of.
He's in the same position as Ollie Pope.
Yep.
No.
Yep. 0. Okay. Now we're going to go with true domestic that haven't played for England. Chris Cook from Glamorgan.
No.
Okay. Steve Milani from Nottingham, who's had a double 100 in his first game back in the 50.
No.
Nope. Okay. Tom.
I love him as a county player. I don't think he's a Test player.
Okay. Tom Abel.
Tom would be a very good choice, possibly the next time around. At the moment, he needs to get his game back. He's kind of edged towards white ball cricket. He's played in the 100. He's played in the Big Bash, but his current first class form is awful. If he'd started this season with a double 100 and 100 and a couple of wins for Somerset, the conversation might be slightly different. And his pedigree isn't judged on just 2 games, but it is in a little way because you're kind of waving your hands at the selectors at the minute, and he's not doing that. He's kind of almost digging a trench and hiding from them because his form is awful. Somerset's form's awful.
Yeah.
So it's difficult to make a case for him.
Okay. Will Rhodes.
I like Will. He's obviously the county championship winning captain for Warwickshire last season.
Yes.
Whether his game is quite good enough for Test cricket, I don't know. We'll never know unless he's tried. I'd like to see him maybe get an opportunity higher up in terms of international honours. It may be just a little bit the wrong timing for Will. He'd definitely be in my shortlist, though, of people to consider. But in terms of the scores out of 10, he'd be behind James Vince. I'd probably give him a 4 or a 5.
Okay. As I said, I'm not going to go through all domestic captains. So we're going to go outside the box.
Sam Billings is another one that people keep bringing up.
Okay.
And I can see why. Whether he's played enough red ball for Kent recently, I don't know. But he's obviously well thought of in that kind of environment. England don't need a keeper. The one place England have got millions of people sort of shouting for positions is the keeper position. And it would be tragic for Ben Folkes if he was ousted for Sam Billings coming in as captain. I can see why he'd probably make my shortlist for at least consideration, or the long list for consideration, but possibly wouldn't be for me, and maybe a 3 or a 4 out of 10.
Okay. As I was going to go outside the box, this is out there, but having said outside the box, Alistair Cook.
It's not even a conversation, is it? He's not coming back.
He is making a lot of runs, James.
But he's not coming back. He's just tired from international cricket.
He might get encouraged the way he's batting. I don't know why he's retired, because he is making a lot of runs. Aaron Morgan, the white ball captain.
Pointless discussion. He doesn't play red ball. His body isn't fit enough to get through 5 days of cricket. He's on his way out of the England white ball captaincy because his form's deteriorated. It's just I've seen a lot of people bringing him up on my Twitter timeline.
Really?
It's kind of, I've stopped replying to it because it's just it's not even a conversation.
So we'll put another 0. Okay. And the last outracky idea, Darren Stevens.
Again, not a conversation.
Okay.
I love Steve-O. He's a terrific county player. He's become a cult hero on the county circuit, but he's not even played international cricket. He's 45 now. It's not a conversation.
Well, we've named over 20 players, and there's only one player that got over 5 out of 10. That was your man James Vince from Hampshire. So that's in a way, is that a bit concerning that?
It's massive. This is all massively concerning because I mean, if you just step back a second, you've got a situation with English cricket at the moment where the chief executive Tom Harrison has made millions and millions of mistakes over the last few years. He's taken a massive bonus and he's on his way out by all accounts of the ECB. But he's currently trying to sign a 10-year TV deal before he goes. I don't know if that means he gets another bonus, but he's almost trying to cement the 100 in as his legacy before he leaves. Which I think would be a tragedy. But he's on his way out and certainly isn't well thought of at the moment in the game. You've lost the director of cricket. Andrew Strauss is in there on a temporary basis. So they need to appoint that person very quickly because somebody needs to take the reins in some degree because there's nobody in charge. You've lost, they haven't got a chairman of selectors at the minute because it went to the head coach. They haven't got a head coach at the minute because Chris Silverwood left after the Ashes and Paul Collingwood only took over on a temporary basis for the West Indies. So probably the chances are that there's 2 positions free there because I think the director of cricket will make that a white ball and red ball coach separate. So that needs replacing. And now we're missing a captain. So there's, in all of the leadership roles in charge of the England side, there is nobody in position. All of those desks have got nobody behind them at the moment.
So apart from England holding a test license, there's nothing wrong.
and just to kind of further that, when people talk about the person's got to come from the existing side. That there's, like I said before, there's 2 people in that team who have got longevity in terms of being able to ink them in. If you're picking a team for the winter tour this time next year or the start of next summer, you've got Joe Root, Yes, of course he is, because he's one of the best batsmen in the world.
Oh yeah,
You got
yeah.
Ben Stokes, yes, of course he is, because he's one of the best all-rounders in the world, assuming he's fit. Apart from that, can you guarantee that any of the other people that are currently involved in the squad are going to still be selectable by that stage? Their form is so up and down. And yeah, you can probably say that there's a few of them in there that have got more chance than others. But the Ollie Popes, the Dan Lawrences, the Johnny
Yeah.
Bairstows have
Mm.
been so in and out of this side and so in and out of form. You can't say they're definitely going to be there in 12 months' time. Alex Lees came in the West Indies, Sibley, Burns, all of the openers. Who's going to be the opener in 12 months' time? If I was to give you, a pen and a paper and say, write down that England test team in 11, 12 months' time, who's going to open for England? None of us would have a clue, would we? Because nobody, hopefully Alex Lee scores loads of runs this summer and takes
Yeah.
that conversation for one of the berths off the
Mm.
table. But nobody has got a clue at the moment who is going to open for England. All the fast bowlers are injured. So who's going to be bowling for England in 12 months' time? Who's going to be keeping? Ben Folkes hasn't taken his opportunity as I was hoping he was going to do. So there are so many question marks in terms
But
of selection going down that 11.
but on that, isn't that the ECB's fault for not bleeding these young kids? Now, like I said, they had depleted injuries in the Ashes, had depleted injuries in West Indies. They could have bled some of these new players, no?
Yeah.
So why didn't they?
Why do the ECB do what they do? Oh, I mean,
Yeah.
I don't know why they get out of bed some days, because I don't know what they achieve. In my opinion, when you take over a leadership role in cricket's hierarchy in terms of administration, your job is to hand over your part of the pie in a better, sweeter tasting kind of
Mm,
flavor, to use that pie analogy, to hand on that piece of pie in a healthier kind of looking shape. At the moment, Tom Harrison, whoever's going to take over from him, is handing the game over in a worse shape to me than when he took it over. Whoever takes charge of Chris Silverwood, I think he was coaching with his hands tied behind his back, but he's handed over the team in a worse shape than it was when he took over. Yeah, there's nobody at the moment in leadership groups inside English cricket that are actually doing their job well enough so they're able to actually pass the baton on to their next person and say, look, this is where I've brought it. It's now better than it was when I took it on. Now it's your job to take it further. In a way, taking a job in English cricket at the moment they all look pretty poison chalicey, don't they? Because it's so
mm,
bad. But in a way, it's the best time to take charge, isn't it? Because you can only
yeah.
go up from where they are.
Well, as you just said, whoever does come over, will they bring in a mentality of that it needs a whole reset, or will they try to fix what was the problem before they came in?
It needs a reset. It
Well,
needs
of course, yeah, yeah.
it's
But are you afraid that they might actually do that? They said, well, let's try to fix it before the reset. Is there a possibility where the next group
I
of
think there
coaches,
seems to be a
CEOs could do that?
drive. There seems to be a drive that the reset's required.
Okay,
Um,
okay,
so I think whoever takes on will get a degree of um, support for changing the game as they see fit. I just hope that whoever takes the game on, whether it's
yep,
Rob Key seems to be the favourite for the director of cricket at the moment.
yep,
Um, they don't seem to have had too many applicants. It
yep.
has to be said, um, and that's that possibly because it doesn't look like a great job, but I think it actually is a great job because you've got the chance to really make a difference in the game at the moment. To take English cricket by the scruff of the neck and really make a difference that's tangible in a few years' time. Um, but I think there's almost like you're taking this job, but you've got to keep the 100. You're taking this job, but you've got to do this. So there are certain parameters in control. Whereas if I took the job, the first thing I'd do was say, right, we're taking the 100 off the list, and we're going to make the summer
Oh yes,
we're going to make the summer a better looking summer. We're going to try and play red ball
exactly.
throughout the summer. We're going to, to me, I mean, I know you're not a fan of white ball cricket, full stop, but I am. To me, an English summer should look like a stick of rock from Blackpool Beach, where you've got the red and white swirls going through the season. So you've got the red there, it's given priority. You've got the white there, it's given priority. But you treat each equally, and you celebrate and market both forms of cricket. At the moment,
Yeah,
the red ball's hidden behind the white football.
yeah,
You get an English summer, you stick in the 100 in the month where the sun's probably going to shine the most and the schools are off. You stick in the T20 Blast next in the fixture list, and then you shoehorn the Red Bull fixtures in around the edges of that. That's the wrong way to do an English summer.
yeah.
We need to give Red Bull priority, because otherwise, I mean, I think it's actually got worse, but generally speaking, England
Gotten
start
worse? How can it
starts
get worse, James?
genuinely speaking, England starts to do postmortems about Red Bull cricket after
Yeah.
the Ashes. And yes, of course, we're after the Ashes now, but it's become a trend though. People can see it elsewhere. England have stopped winning at home even. So people that care about the game and care about Red Bull cricket are seeing now that trend starting to really go through the game more than just in the big series. And whoever takes over as director of cricket has got a real opportunity to make themselves an absolute hero. Because I'm not saying, keep the 100 if you must. Keep the 100. I don't think we're gonna. I can shout all day long, but the 100 is probably here to stay, and I've probably got to get used to that.
Mm.
But at least put the Red Bull fixtures in the right places. Try and get those pitches sorted out. Try and give the county system some degree of priority, and actually look like you care about it. I nearly swore then, but
Yeah, yeah, no, that's fine.
the ECB. I did a tweet the other day. How are you expecting cricket lovers, sports fans, floating sports fans, people from the edges of the game that you're trying to drag into cricket to be supporters? How can you expect them to love county cricket and the championship if the ECB look like they don't give a crap about it?
Well, just on that, I haven't seen one tweet from the ECB pages regarding county cricket. Not one tweet.
Yeah. I tweeted exactly that the other day.
Yeah.
And I did get a couple of responses, which are fair enough responses. That each of the different competitions has its own Twitter feed. So there's a county championship Twitter feed.
Oh,
But
please.
as the governing body, if you've got assorted Twitter feeds, you've got the ability to cross promote. You've got the ability to shout about the championship from the 100 feed. You've got the ability from the championship's reaching its kind of last fixture before the 100 starts. You say, over to the 100 now, we'll see you after the 100's finished. Enjoy the actually give each other a bit of a leg up and say, that's over there and that's over there, and you should all be happy about everything. Everything's great. The sun's shining. Cricket's here, everybody. At the moment, they don't do that. Cross promote, actually show you love the sport.
Well, they do that with the Sheffield Shield in Australia. If someone's made 100, they'll post a tweet. Someone's took 5 wickets, they'll post a tweet. Australia really, regardless, I'm not a fan of breaking up competitions, like the Sheffield Shield does for Big Bash. But what I do agree with Cricket Australia, they do promote the Sheffield Shield just as much as the Big Bash.
Yeah.
And I think that's very important for Red Bull cricket. Now,
it's
you
massive.
said,
Show you actually think it's important. Because if you don't look like you think it's important, how are you going to expect Fred Smith to? Yes.
Well, exactly. Well, you made the point that I'm not a fan of white ball cricket. I'll bury the hatchet here. I'm not. I used to be. I used to love white ball cricket. I used to stay up at 3 a.m. in the Caribbean in 2007 to watch Australia winning the West Indies. I stayed up for those tournaments. But what put me off of white ball cricket is the lack of respect towards Red Bull. They moved all kind of white ball cricket and replaced that head of Red Bull cricket, and that's what I didn't like. That's why I don't like the IPL. That's why I don't like the T20 World Cup. The T20 World Cup, James. No, we had one last year. Now we're going to have one this year in Australia. I couldn't give a damn where it's played. Why are we having 2 World Cups in 2 years in a row?
That's because of COVID just kind of shoehorned them together, isn't it?
That I understand. I can understand that to agree, but I've seen scheduling that, World Cups 2 years apart from each other. That's ridiculous. That's why I do not like white ball cricket, because my belief is, right, the premier white ball cricket is the 50-over World Cup. That's how it always should be. Now, if you want to go back to Rebel white ball tournaments such as World Series cricket, which I wasn't even born, which was massively successful in Australia, that's fine. But I just thought that T20, and white ball cricket overtake red ball cricket, and I think that's wrong in all countries. James, we've seen in West Indies completely destroy red ball cricket. We've seen that in Sri Lanka completely destroyed red ball
I
cricket to
agree
white
with
ball.
you to an extent,
Yeah,
but why?
yeah,
Yeah, we have to be realistic. Ultimately, a sport is a business. It's an
yeah.
entertainment industry,
Yeah,
but it's also a business.
I
You've got to
I
pay.
understand the money. Yeah,
Yeah,
go ahead,
so
James. Go
you've
ahead.
got to pay the bills. You've got to,
Yeah,
and it's the T20
yeah,
tournaments at the moment that are the revenue
yeah,
generators, aren't they? And
yeah, yeah,
so that is why there's room for both.
yeah,
I
yeah,
love the IPL. I love watching.
yeah.
I really enjoyed the T20 World Cup. I have to say. So there's room for both in the sport. So it's not. This isn't for me. This isn't what somebody I know calls format wars, where it's either red ball or white ball. It's both, and actually treat both as if they're precious.
I don't think they can though, James. If you held a gun to the ICC's head and said, right, get rid of IPL, get rid of the T20 World Cups, or get rid of Test cricket, I think they'd pick Test cricket.
Why do you need to get rid of any of those three?
Well, I'm just using them as an example.
They can all they
But
can all live
yeah,
they can all live
yeah,
alongside each other.
but I'm just saying they'd pick Test cricket to go, and I think that's unacceptable. I think Test cricket is the number one format uh, of cricket. I don't give a damn if it's played in Antarctica to bloody Greenland. Test cricket should always be your number one format. That's my opinion on that.
Yeah. No, I mean that's how I look at it as well. But I
Now,
would
yeah,
be I'd also be massively sad if T20
yeah,
disappeared now,
yeah,
because I
yeah.
love some of the
Yeah,
T20 tournament.
yeah, yeah. Now that's not me neglecting white ball. If it was up to me, you just get rid of white ball cricket. I wouldn't. I'd go back to how it was, because I think how it was before the IPL came in, before T20 came in, I think it was fine financially. I think it was all good. Now someone can prove me wrong with that, but I don't think Test ICC was going broke. They've added these formats in, and they've been so successful that it's too hard to get rid of them now. But I don't think Test cricket sorry, the ICC, the game of cricket, was in trouble before IPL came in, before T20 came in, James.
No, but it's stronger financially because of them.
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
Like I say, I don't think there's anything wrong with playing the IPL. I don't
yeah,
think there's anything wrong with having the Blast or the Big Bash or the CPL or Pakistan Super League or any of these tournaments. I think the white ball is important. There is a new generation that loves probably white ball, doesn't like Test cricket. That's fine.
mm,
If that's what turns you on, that's what gets your juices flowing, that's what gets you through the turnstiles, and that's great. But equally, there's a lot of us out there, you and me included, who love
mm,
Test cricket and will sit in front of.
yeah,
Nothing I'd prefer more than to sit in for 5 days in a beautiful ground watching two
mm,
teams play Test cricket against each other. It'd be marvelous. So there is a place for both, and that's for me the important thing is it's not that or that. It's not having to choose which one goes obsolete. It's actually trying to work out. We want to keep red ball. We want to keep white ball. We want to give both priority. We want to love both. We want to show the world we love both. And this is how we slot them into the 365 days of a
mm.
cricketing year. And that's the important part, because there's only 365 days and there's an awful lot of cricket being played. And it's how you actually balance that calendar so that everybody gets a little bit of what they want.
Well, I do it all the time for my beloved Redbacks, who stink up the joint every damn year. I love seeing Adelaide Oval, or Karen or Ralton Oval, as they play there now. But I support my state cricket. I'm sure you support your county team, Yorkshire, I believe. So
Absolutely.
yeah. So that's just who I am individually as a person. I don't hate white ball, but I just think when the priority lacks over red ball cricket, that's what I kind of have a problem with. Now, we've gone off topic here. My boss on this show is a mad white ball fan, and I'll be getting it. Don't worry, after this. So I'm already in hot water. So I need to move to topic.
He never shows up when I'm on anymore. He's right in the big Garavas.
Yeah, exactly. It seems to do all the hard work, but I'll talk about IPL white ball cricket in a negative way. Oh, do I get it? Now back to England. Are we any closer for the coaching role?
Few names been mentioned. I think
Yep.
Paul Collingwood's performance in the West Indies wasn't the greatest
Yeah.
advertisement for himself in terms of the test side. I think he's very much in the conversation for the white ball job. I've heard people like Mahela Jayawardene, Ricky Ponting, a few others mentioned in terms of that, the white ball job. They've talked about splitting it so that it allows a player to go, a coach to go and coach in the IPL and and what have you as well, so they can get the best of both worlds. And they're talking about paying a lot of money as well, breaking the bank a little bit to actually get the right man to come in to coach the White Bull side. And they're talking about the same thing for Red Bull. I've seen a number of names mentioned, including Justin Langer, who apparently is interested.
Mm.
We've seen the Gary Kirsten was talked about as well. So a number of potentials there for the Red Bull too. But I think that comes the obvious order for these positions to be filled is director of cricket
Yep.
first, to
Yep.
then appoint the head coach, to then start thinking about who the captain should be. So it's going to be a kind of rolling process.
Mm.
You talk about me not coming on here very often, or coming on here more often than you think I should. We might get an announcement every week from here on, so you might
Yeah,
see
I
a lot of
think,
me.
yeah,
But yeah,
exactly.
the director of cricket, I think, is the one they've got to get in place first, because he's got to be the man, whoever that person is, to get his feet under that desk, think about, right, this is where I want to take cricket, and these are the people I want to take me there. And that's, yes, he's the first person in situ, or she, you never know.
Would you be against a woman?
Absolutely not. I
Yep.
want the right person for the job. I mean, I never understand with the director of cricket why it has to be a former England player. Because
Yeah.
director of cricket, you need to have somebody who obviously understands the game and is passionate about the game. But me and you could say that.
Yeah.
And, but you need to have somebody who's got some kind of like leadership, management drive, and can, plan and strategize and all that kind of stuff. Somebody that's come from the county game, England game, into this commentary box, knows how to stand in front of a camera and talk about cricket. And I'm talking about Rob Key here. I love Rob Key. I think as a pundit, he's superb. As a commentator, he's superb. I really like some of the stuff he says. But what experience has Rob Key got about being in charge of an organisation? Absolutely nothing.
Yeah. Yeah.
So why is he the right person to be director of cricket for England? Just because he said the right things a couple of times on Sky.
Well, whoever they do announce, James, I hardly doubt they'll have a press conference at back of a net, like they did when Andrew McDonald got his job as the coach in Cricket Australia, when they just did a bunch at a net behind MCG, which I think was
knock him, he's doing all right.
Yeah. So well, that was kind of a player thing. Pat Cummins and Steve Smith liked him, so forget about every.
By the way, how would you see it as an Aussie if Justin Langer became the head coach of the England Test team?
Well, I'd wish him all the best, but from an Aussie perspective, I'd be a little bit disappointed because there was a lot of people in Australia that believe he got shafted.
Yeah.
I think I'd like to say predominantly people like to see him do well, except against Australia. And
it'd be very strange for me, as somebody that's grown up watching his great side. I mean, I'm a Perth Scorch. If I have a team in the Big Bash, it's the Perth Scorchers. So I know him from that part. He's coaching in that part of the world, and but obviously, as an England supporter, and I've always wanted him to get out when I've ever seen him bat against us. But it would be quite strange to see him on the England balcony in an Ashes series.
I think the way he left, a lot of empathy for him. As I said, a lot of people think, what happened wasn't right. Cricket Australia did not handle that very well. Neither did they handle the Tim Payne thing very well. So I think people would be presently pleased.
I tell you what, Lucas, you could probably go through pretty much every single governing body of cricket internationally, and you count on one hand the amount of things they actually do handle right. How much? They tend to get things wrong all the time, don't they?
Exactly. Yeah. So well, I think with social media, I think they use that as a kind of a tool, instead of facing the music, which Cricket Australia did with Tim Payne and the Justin Langer thing, and now with the new coach Andrew McDonald. I didn't like that personally. I didn't mind the choice. How they did it, I thought was a little bit disrespectful, because basically Pat Cummins said, Steve Smith, well, I want them. Well, you got it. You got them. So I didn't really like that personally. I would have liked Ricky Ponting. I think you just mentioned how would the public feel if Justin Langer went to England. In contrast to Ricky Ponting, if he went to England, I think a lot of people would be very mad with that, upset, because they want him coaching Australia. And all the times that they've asked Ricky Ponting has turned them down for media roles. And if Ricky Ponting was to be the man to coach England, there'd be a lot of people that'd be upset by that.
I don't got a lot of time. I mean, I got a lot of time for overseas coaches.
Yeah.
Yeah, my county Yorkshire have had that. You know, in recent times, have had their best years with overseas coaches.
Yeah.
England's they've had probably their best performances. You know, winning the World Cup under Trevor Bayliss, etc. But there are certain players that are just so synonymous with the opposition. And Ricky Ponting, 2005 Ashes, one of the most iconic series, was the Australian
Oh yeah.
captain. I love him as a pundit. You know, he comes across, he's brilliant. When you see him interviewed, he
Oh
comes
yeah.
across as a really nice guy.
Yeah.
It's one of the most disappointing things as an Englishman, actually. Whenever you talk to an Australian who you have kind of tuned yourself to want to get out all the time, you actually talk to them, they always come across as really nice blokes. Got nothing but admiration for Jason Gillespie, who I worked with when I was at Yorkshire. But Ricky Ponting being in an English tracksuit would be very hard for me to get my head around.
Yeah, you wouldn't be the only one. I'd be livid, absolutely, because the amount of times he said no to Australia, then he bloody goes and turns around and says yes to England. I would be livid with that.
I wouldn't. To be honest, I don't think he'd do it. I really don't. I can't see him. If I don't know him. I've met him once, and it was very, very fleetingly. So I don't know him, but I can only kind of piece together what I've seen from interviews and how he comes across. I can't see him wanting to coach England.
Well, it's good to know you've met the who's who of cricket, James. You know, and I've met Ash Nagar's brother.
When I met Ricky at a, was it 2009 Ashes Test match? I was working as the media manager at Yorkshire. We were doing a dinner for Michael Vaughan, and we wanted to get Ricky Ponting to do a little thing to a video. I've got 3 questions written down, and he basically, we went through their media people and said, "Yeah, he'll give you 10 minutes or 5 minutes or whatever." Very busy, obviously. So we got ushered him into this room. I had the video camera, my 3 questions. He just looked at me. I said, "Hello, Ricky." He goes, "All right, mate. Question number 1." Can't remember what the 3 questions, but reeled off the questions. I said, "Thank you." He went, "Is that it, mate?" And then he cleared off. And that was it. He shook my hand, and that was it. Yeah, it's very, very functional. It was very perfunctory. I think that's the phrase.
Oh, it's good.
It wasn't a chat. It wasn't really a chat.
No, well, it's good to get a media job in cricket, James. A lot of benefits there. A lot of benefits. A job that I really wish I had. But anyway, we could go on for hours about that. But anyway, James, thank you. Actually, I do. Speaking of coaches, what were your reactions to Chris Silverwood being appointed coach of Sri Lanka?
I think he'll do a really good job there. I think in the same way it's hard to judge Joe Root with everything that's been going on. I think Chris Silverwood took over England at a very, very difficult time. Bubbles, blah 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 blah. I think he was coaching with his hands tied behind his back to a degree. Maybe, yeah. You would imagine if you sat down with him, he's quite an honest guy, very likable bloke. He would probably honestly say that he got things wrong and he got things right. And if he had his time again, there might be a few things he might do differently, but I don't think he did anything dramatically wrong. And I think with Sri Lanka, maybe slightly lesser expectations, a slightly more club feel to the way they are as a team. I think he might do really well there.
Yeah, you mentioned that he wasn't given the support in England, but gee, that's not better in Sri Lanka. They've got real big problems with their test team.
Yeah, I mean, there's political stuff that he's going to have to kind of climb himself around. Yeah. Whether he actually get what he wants with them as well remains to be seen. But I think if they put faith in him and allow him to make decisions, we saw in county cricket what he transformed Essex and made them into championship title winners and one-day winners. And Anthony McGrath's taken that on since. So I think if they do back him, he's certainly got the pedigree to make Sri Lanka. And they've got some half-decent players, so why shouldn't he be successful? I think England maybe was the wrong job at the wrong time for Chris Silverwood.
Yep. Well, based on that, James, thank you for coming to today's show. I was going to say, well, we'll see you in June, but geez, we could see you early as next week.
I'll see you tomorrow.
Yeah, exactly. We'll see you tomorrow in case they come out with a new coach, new director. But anyway, James, it is a pleasure with you always. Give James Butler a follow on the Cricket Badger. And let's not to try the abuse because he puts up with it so much. Every time he makes a statement, he seems to get abused. So do I sometimes. I'm sure I'll get abused after this IPL chat I've had with James slightly.
I've
So thank you
created
for
200 different Twitter accounts, Lucas, and I just abuse you from each and every one of them.
that. Oh, well, there you go. Well, that would not surprise me. That would not surprise me. Trust me. but anyway, James, thank you for coming to today's show, and we really appreciate it.
Always a pleasure, mate.
Okay, thank you, guys. Make sure to like and subscribe. Please join and follow us on Twitter. Thank you guys so much. Goodbye.